Hello, and welcome to the inaugural episode of We Are What You Read, the new initiative I have launched via my book review blog, BOLO Books. My name is Kristopher Zgorski, and I'm the founder and sole reviewer at BOLO Books. It was recently announced at Malice Domestic that I will be receiving the Amelia Award at next year's convention. For those that don't know, Malice Domestic is an annual convention held in Bethesda, Maryland every year. Which celebrates the traditional mystery via panels, interviews, and the Agatha Awards banquet. The Amelia Award itself is presented by board members to individuals they feel contribute to the Malice Domestic community and exemplify what Malice Domestic represents. I am, of course, beyond honored by this recognition, and while I know that it was given to me for my previous efforts, I felt like I needed to do something moving forward for the year between the announcement of the award and getting the award at next year's convention, and so I came up with We Are What We Read. Then I reached out to my friend, Shawn Reilly Simmons, asked her if she would be my co-host for this initiative, and she graciously agreed. After a previous event where we were co-hosts, we were dubbed the Regis and Kathy Lee of crime fiction. And I'm pretty sure that in this description, I was the Kathy Lee, and I'm proud of that fact. I'm going to let Shawn explain how the evening is going to progress.
Yes, and thank you so much for inviting me and having me. I would do anything with you, Kristopher. Let's just get that straight first. So thank you for allowing me to be part of this. I'm very excited to be here. What it's going to be, what tonight is, what the first one, well, I guess all of them, 6 members of the crime fiction community were invited to participate in this first episode. Each was instructed to choose a book that they would like to highlight, promote, for whatever reason they deemed appropriate. There were no restrictions on the genre, subgenre, or age of the book. They just had to be able to stand behind their choice as a great read that they would recommend to other readers, because Kristopher is a champion of readers, and that's why he made this whole thing happen. We'll progress alphabetically, ending with both my choice, Shawn, and Kristopher's for his first episode. Each participant will have 3 to 5 minutes to tell you about their choice and why they picked it. And if they go longer, then we will do the big hook and we'll take them off and play the music off. But no, we probably won't have to. It's hard to talk for 5 minutes about anything, really. So let's get started.
First up, we have Edwin Hill. Edwin Hill's critically acclaimed crime novels include the standalone thriller The Secrets We Share and 3 novels featuring Hester Thursby. He has been nominated for the Agatha and Edgar Award, featured in Us magazine, received star reviews in Publishers Weekly, Book List, and Library Journal, and was recognized as one of 6 crime writers to watch in Mystery Scene magazine. He lives in Roslindale, Massachusetts, with his partner Michael and his favorite reviewer, their lab, Edith Ann, who finds his first drafts enough. He loves his first drafts enough to eat them. His latest novel, Who to Believe, publishes in January, and this is the first I'm hearing about that, so that's an exciting piece of news. So let's see what Edwin Hill has chosen.
Hey everyone, thanks so much for having me, and congratulations, Kristopher, on this amazing award, and how fun to celebrate this for the next year with you. So I chose a book called Case Histories by Kate Atkinson. You can see it's very well loved. And I'll tell you a little story. When I was in the early 2000s, I went and got my MFA at Emerson College here in Boston, where I live, and I wrote a novel, and I got an agent coming right out of my MFA, which was really a huge celebration for me. And she shopped that novel around. She was a big deal agent, and I was surprised. And she shopped the novel around all of New York, and it got rejected everywhere. And it was a sad story for me. And I got kind of discouraged. And of course, I had just gotten an MFA, so I was broke as well. So I kind of gave up and I stopped writing, and I went and got a job in publishing. And I thought that chapter of my life was over. And then one day I was lying in bed reading my beloved Entertainment Weekly. Does everyone remember when that was still in print? And Stephen King used to have a column in the magazine every I don't know if it was every week, but maybe every month, where he would recommend novels that he really liked. And I read about this novel, and actually the quote is right, one of the quotes from it is right on the cover. It says, "Not just the best novel I read this year, but the best mystery of the decade. I defy any reader not to feel a combination of delight and amazement." And so I thought, that sounds like the kind of book that I'd like to read. So I picked up this copy, and I just devoured it. I read it so quickly. This is the first of the Jackson Brodie series. So I think she's written 6 of them now. But they're quirky. They are very character based. They play with structure in ways that's really interesting. Jackson Brodie is a really flawed but likable character. No, I don't know if he's likable, but he's a flawed character that you root for. And that's exactly what I was trying to do when I was writing my thesis for my MFA program. So I thought to myself, well, this woman, this like, no one's ever heard of Kate Atkinson. This woman did that. Surely I can do that too. And then it took me a couple of years to get the courage up to try again. But in 2010, I was like, okay, I'm going to give this writing thing a try. And I dove into my first novel, and it only took me 8 years to get it published from there. But I applied a lot of the things that I learned from reading this novel and the series that this is based on. One of the things that I really love about this, both the novel and the series, is how certain themes and characters just echo through the entire series. There's a main character in this first novel who there are just shadows of her through the rest of the series. And if you read the series if you read the series closely or not closely, you feel those shadows the entire time. So pick it up, Kate Atkinson, Case Histories, and I hope you enjoy it. Let me know what you think of it.
Well, that's great. Well, I haven't read that one. I'm embarrassed to say I haven't, but I am going to read it now. And I think a lot of these I think the show is gonna that's the point. So I'm excited to read it. Thanks, Edwin.
Thank you.
Our next participant is Catriona McPherson. Hi, Katrina.
Hi, I'm
Hello.
busy.
Hello.
Hello.
There
Hi.
she is. There she is. Our friend. So, brief intro. Katrina writes 1930s detective novels, contemporary crime comedies, and she is very funny. I'm just personally like, knowing you, you're hilarious. And also contemporary psychological thrillers. She has just started a series set in the late 1940s, in Edinburgh, her home city, about a nosy upstart, no comment. That's in the notes. She reads all of these types of crime fiction plus police procedurals, PI stories, spy novels, cozies, paranormal suspense, legal thrillers, and probably more that have slipped her mind. And I know that you every Friday you post that you read something on, anyways, you're a very big reader as well as a writer. So you're up.
I am. I'm a big reader, and I've read Case Histories and absolutely second what Edwin said. It's right on the edge of fantastic, and I give up, for a writer to read it, because it's so accomplished, it's so apparently effortless. And Jackson Brodie is not just likable, he's lovable, he's marriageable, he is mine. Anyway, but I'm not talking about Kate Atkinson and my boyfriend Jackson Brodie today. My choice is a book called Monkey Wrench by P.J. Tracy, and it's another series opener like Case Histories. It was published in 2003, I reckon. Look, I'm reading it again. I started looking at it to make a few notes for this, and now I'm on page 109. I think it was published in 2003, and I'm going to recommend it for 2 very, very personal reasons, and a bunch of reasons that will go for anyone. So first personal reason, I bought this in the winter of 2003-2004 on what was my very first trip to the US. I spent the winter in Worcester, Ohio, and this is set in, is Ohio the Midwest? I don't know. Getting there, and this is set in the Midwest, and I was completely blown away. I'd never read anything like it. It says here the thriller debut of the year, Harlan Coben. So it's not as if it's an obscure book, but the chances are I didn't know who Harlan Coben was in 2003 either. So that's my excuse. So the series was written by P.J. Tracy, which was a mother and daughter team of PJ, mother, and Tracy, the daughter, Lambrecht. 10 books, except Tracy wrote the last, at least 1.5 on her own. PJ is no longer with us, but Tracy's still writing, and she started a new series that's just hers. So why is this such a... I mean, this is the third time I've read it. Why did this make such a big impression on me? Well, you get a lot of, what's that expression, bang for your buck. You get a police procedural. There are police here. There are wonderful characters, Leo Magozzi and Gino Rolseth. So Leo Magozzi is a divorced, slightly disaffected, slightly romantic figure, and Gino Rolseth is a puppy. He's happily married to his sainted wife. He's got his wonderful family. He's always got food from home in a thermos. And then there's the rest of the detectives and the beat cops and the desk sergeant. Think Brooklyn Nine-Nine. So there's a great cast of cops. But there's also the Monkey Wrench gang. Now, in this first book, the Monkey Wrench gang, who I'll introduce really briefly, are software developers. They make games, and they've made a game that's solving a serial killer's video game with crime scene photographs to click on, and you're the detective. So not as salacious as it sounds, you're the detective. Guess what happens? While they're beta testing it, and there aren't that many people who've seen it, the crime scenes start to pop up all over the place with real corpses. So the Monkey Wrench crew are suspects, and the beta testers are suspects, and the case kicks off. So the crew are Grace McBride and her dog. There's a cute dog, Charlie, who wears English riding boots in case someone slashes her ankles, and takes her gun out to the terrace with her in her bathrobe pocket when she drinks her coffee in the morning. So she's obviously got a past. There's Roadrunner, real name, a kind of Ichabod Crane character, who is a cycling enthusiast, is putting it mildly. And also, very interesting history for him, Harley Davidson, real name, changed by deed poll, who is a biker, as his name suggests. And Annie Blinsky, who is fabulous. And they're all that wonderful thing that you get, that they're really clever. They're tech geniuses, they're computer geniuses. So you get that really satisfying, you get it a lot in heist movies, like Ocean's 11 or something like The Sting, where people are working together and they're doing stuff that's just clever. I love that. And there's also Mitch, who I call Abercrombie and Mitch, the fifth member of the gang, who's very preppy. The setting is Minneapolis, Minnesota. And as the series goes on, it's either the depths of winter and Gino's bitching and kvetching about how cold it is, or it's sweltering humidity in the summer and Gino's bitching and kvetching about how hot it is. And the plots are serial killers, psychopaths, hate crimes, obsessions, avenging angels, abnormal psychology of every kind, and a lot of eruptions that accompany like failed attempts to suppress stuff. But the tone, if you look at the blurbs, is there are a lot of laughs, not cheap shots, really well handled. So Harlan Coben says fast, fresh and funny, debut thriller of the year. Robert B. Parker, funny and convincing. And Nevada Barr says genuinely fun, not only original but genuinely funny. The characters are fresh, the plot's intricate, and the ending's absolute dynamite. And it's 5 books in one, and I loved it first time I read it. Have I got a second left to say this? The second time I read it, I had just adopted 2 5-week-old kittens, because the kitten lady was hand-rearing 14 orphan kittens, and I took 2 of them, and I brought them home, and I was feeding them chicken and rice and, getting the fleas off them and things. And for some reason, I picked this up and started reading it again. So I had these 2 dots in my lap, and every time I turned a page, 4 little blue eyes did this. And I remember saying, oh, babies, you're going to have to get used to that sound if you're going to live with me. So that's my second memory of reading Monkey Wrench, which is not applicable to anyone else, but doesn't hurt. There you go, PJ Tracy.
I too am a huge fan. It's one of my favorite debuts of all time, so I'm glad that Katrina chose it. I highly recommend you pick it up and follow the series. It's a really great example of an ensemble group of people and how that unfolds across a series of books. So highly recommended. Next up, we have Wanda Morris. Wanda M. Morris is the acclaimed author of All Her Little Secrets, named as one of the best books of 2021 by the Hudson Booksellers and selected as a #1 top pick by Library Reads by librarians across the country. Her latest novel, Anywhere You Run, was named one of the top crime fiction books of 2022 by the New York Times. It has received star reviews from Kirkus, Publishers Weekly, Library Journal, and Booklist. Welcome, Wanda.
Hello, hello. Hey, friends. How are you? So, first, congratulations, Kristopher. What an honor. We're so proud of you. So, my book is Beloved. And this book, I think most people are familiar with it. This is my very worn copy that I bought way back in the 1980s when it came out. So Beloved is the story of, it's set in post-Civil War Ohio, and it's the story of Sethi, who is an escaped enslaved American, and she seemingly risked everything to get out of a living hell. And she, as the book starts, she lives with her daughter, Denver, her mother-in-law, baby Suggs, and a mysterious intruder called Beloved. And as the book goes on, you come to discover how much Sethi risked and the impact that this mysterious intruder has on her life and those around them. The first time I read this book, I didn't know what I had read, if that makes any sense. I just remember how I felt when I closed the book. And I thought to myself, oh my gosh, I was enraptured. I was emotionally wrought. And of course, Toni Morrison is Toni Morrison, so you kind of come to expect all that. And so when I went into the book, because the book by most accounts is considered literary genre, but the book is so much more than that. It is mystery, it's historical, it's horror. And so it melds all these genres together in this story that is so emotional that it really kind of took my breath away. The characters, the voice, the writing is just lyrical. And, I love this book for so many reasons, for all those things, but I love it because this book has those small moments that, they're like pressure points that touch you and you go, oh my gosh, it creates a visual in your mind, and then it creates like an emotional something in your heart. And I just want to, if I still have another minute, I just want to read a little small section to give you an example of why I find this book so touching. A fully dressed woman walked out of the water. She barely gained the dry bank of the stream before she sat down and leaned against a mulberry tree. Sopping wet and breathing shallow, she spent those hours trying to negotiate the weight of her eyelids. The day breeze blew her dress dry. The night wind wrinkled it. Women who drink champagne when there's nothing to celebrate can look like that. Their straw hats with broken brims are often askew. They nod in public places. Their shoes are undone. But their skin is not like that of the woman breathing near the steps of 124. She had new skin, lineless and smooth, including the knuckles of her hands. So it's like poetry, but it is also so touching that you can imagine this woman with this, a skewed hat and broken brim on her hat, and you wonder what she has been through. Where is she going? And so, of course, nobody can write like Toni Morrison, but I read her book not only for what it gives me as a reader, but I also read it for craft because I like books that touch me emotionally. And so I read her books to kind of figure out, how do you place these emotional touch points in your story that kind of grab the reader and stay with them long after the book is finished, after you've closed the covers of the book. So that's my book. I consider it a seminal work, Beloved by Toni Morrison.
That's such a great way to describe it too. And now I want to go back and reread that, because I think I read it back in the 80s, you know, was when it came out as well. I worked in a lot of bookstores, so I was always, you know, in the back room reading, but that reminds me that I need to revisit that one. So thank you, Wanda. Our next guest took the instruction to send a brief bio very seriously. It is one sentence. Alan Orloff is an Anthony, Agatha, Derringer, and two-time Thriller Award-winning author. And that is his bio. And I think he might be in with witness protection or something. So come on, Alan, you're up.
Okay. Thank you, Kristopher. Thank you, Shawn. Thanks for inviting me to participate. It's always fun to revisit a book in a series that means so much to me. And Kristopher, congrats on the Amelia Award. That's great. And well deserved. After I graduated college, I took a job outside of Boston working for General Electric. My boss asked me if I liked to read, and I said, sure, of course. Who doesn't like to read? Up until that time, though, most of my reading consisted of horror and science fiction. So I read a lot of Stephen King and Dean Koontz and Robert Heinlein and Isaac Asimov, with an occasional Agatha Christie or Robert Ludlum thrown in. Well, my boss recommended a series about a PI that took place right there in Boston. It was, as I'm sure you could guess, the Spencer series by Robert B. Parker. The rest is history, my history of loving crime fiction. From then on, I read every Spencer book as soon as it came out. Parker wrote 40 Spencer books, and Ace Atkins wrote another 10 after Parker's death, which I also thought those were great too. Now, I could have chosen just about any of those books, but I would like to shine the spotlight on the fourth book in the series, Promised Land. It won the 1977 Edgar Award for Best Novel, and it was also the first book to include Hawk, his erudite and muscular sidekick. And if Hawk isn't the coolest sidekick in crime fiction, he's second only to Joe Pike. Now, there are only about 5 plots in Parker's Spencer series, maybe 6. And in Promised Land, it's the one where Spencer is hired to find a missing person. Then he finds the person, but refuses to tell the client where the person is, because the person doesn't want to get returned to the situation that they escaped from. I could fill in some more details: militant feminists, the mob, a shady real estate developer, etc. But I know that doesn't narrow it down very much. However, in my opinion, the details are never very important in a Spencer book. It's more about the characters and how Spencer negotiates the many moral hurdles he encounters. Now, I have an embarrassing admission to make. My knowledge of classic crime fiction is sorely lacking. So a few years ago, in an attempt to rectify that, I picked up a few classics, some James M. Cain, Dashiell Hammett, Raymond Chandler. And after I read one of Chandler's Marlowe books, I think it was The Big Sleep, my conclusion was this: Chandler's just ripping off Robert B. Parker's Spencer. Yes, I realize I'm an idiot sometimes. So how did Parker's books influence my writing? Well, here's a little known fact. In my head, which I don't invite anyone to enter because it's scary up there, but in my head, all of the books I've written are really Spencer novels in disguise. Somehow that's the pattern my writing follows. My protagonist has a mission. He and his partners go around and talk to a bunch of people. Then they invariably get warned off the case, and so on and so on. Just like Spencer and Hawk and Susan and the rest of the characters in Parker's books. It wasn't until my 9th novel that I wrote an actual PI novel. For me, though, the best thing about Spencer, the one attribute that sticks with me the most, is how he obeys his moral code to the exclusion of virtually everything else. In plain terms, Spencer always does the right thing, and that's in all caps. And you'll find that in most of my books, the protagonist tries to do the right thing, again, in all caps. That's it.
The beauty of this series is that it makes us go back and look at those books from the past that we may have missed or that we just forgot about and just want to revisit. I just want to go back and start from the beginning of the series and read them. It's such a great, great series. So thanks for making that choice, Alan. Our next guest is Tonya Spratt-Williams. Tonya Spratt-Williams is an avid reader. She is a former Malice Domestic board member and was Malice Domestic 35's this year's fan guest of honor. So we're glad to welcome her to our evening.
Hi, good afternoon. Hello, Shawn and Kristopher. Thank you both so much for allowing me the opportunity to just share this absolutely phenomenal book that is probably maybe my favorite book ever. Kristopher, congratulations on your Agatha, your well-deserved, Amelia honor. Some of those starting with A's, they get me sometimes, but congratulations on your very well-deserved Amelia honor, and just thank you so much for all of your contributions to the Malice community. I'm not sure how I found this book. I somehow stumbled on it. I've actually lived in Spain. I lived there for quite some time, and second to the United States, Spain is probably my favorite place in the world. And so somehow I stumbled upon this book. It's called The Shadow in the Wind, and it's by Carlos. I'm not sure if you could see that. It's probably not coming through very well because of my blurring there, but it's called The Shadow in the Wind, and it's the first book of a beautifully written and complex tetralogy by Carlos Ruiz Zafran. I love this book for just numerous and varied reasons, but one reason in particular is because it's a book about the love of books. Okay, because I am one who I absolutely love books. Books have always, as I've said, they've been a sanctuary and a refuge for me. So I absolutely love books. And I've never read a passage about books more eloquently written than in this story. So the story basically begins in 1945, Barcelona, Spain, and it centers on basically a young motherless boy named Daniel, whose father is an antiquarian book dealer. And one morning, Daniel's father decides that it's time just to kind of introduce him to this enormous library or sanctuary or refuge, all of the words that I love to use for libraries. And it's called the Cemetery of Lost Books. So the author describes the Cemetery of Forgotten Books. I'm so excited, I'm using the wrong words here. So the Cemetery of Forgotten Books is described as a place of mystery, it's described as a sanctuary. And the most beautiful passage about it reads that, and I just want to share that with you all because it's absolutely amazing. It's the best passage I've ever read about books. It says, "Every book, every volume you see here has a soul, the soul of the person who wrote it and of those who read it and lived and dreamed with it. Every time a book changes hands, every time someone runs his eyes down its page, its spirit grows and strengthens." Oh my gosh, does not encompass the sentiment of a fan, of a reader, of someone who's listening to it? I thought that is probably the most beautiful passage about what a book is that I've ever read. The book, and actually, as I said, it's a tetralogy, so there are 4 of them in the series. Actually, it's not even just the book, the entire series is absolutely amazing. And I am one of those people who, when I see blurbs on the front of books or the back of books, I normally be like, okay, I don't really believe it. But after reading this, the blurbs on this particular book are accurate and they're genuine. Stephen King called it a gorgeous read. This is absolutely one of the most gorgeously written books I've ever read in my life. Michael Dirda of the Washington Post said that anyone who enjoys a novel that is scary, erotic, touching, tragic, and thrilling should rush right out to the nearest bookstore and pick up The Shadow of the Wind. Really, you should. I cannot think of something that is more on point, more accurate. I absolutely love this entire series. And the author, Carlos Ruiz Zafran, is considered by many to be the second best author coming out of Spain, second only to Miguel de Cervantes Saavedra, who, of course, is the author of Don Quixote. And again, I recommend this book, not only just the book, but the entire series without reservation, because I can tell you, having read this book for a second time, it absolutely amazes me that rereading a book can absolutely take your breath away. And unfortunately, Carlos Zafran, he actually passed away just a couple of years ago. So I'm very sad that, that there won't be future works by him. But I recommend The Shadow of the Wind without reservation. And I just can't wait to hear how you all enjoy it. So thank you so much.
Tanya, that's so lovely. And I'm going to find that book and read it because you've inspired me to do that. So look at all the, you guys don't have enough time to read all these books. No, I will. I'll get to them all. I will. All right. Our next guest. Thank you, Tanya. Our next guest is Gabriel Valjan. Hi, Gabriel. So glad that you're here. He had a little bit longer bio than Alan. He is the recipient of the McCavity Award, and he has been listed for the Bridport and Fish Prizes, the Agatha, Anthony, Derringer, and Silver Falchion Awards. He lives in Boston and answers to a tuxedo cat named Munchkin, who is a celebrity in her own right. So you're up, Gabriel.
Hi. Thank you for having me, and congratulations, Chris, on the Amelia. I'm looking forward to seeing the both of you again, hopefully at BouchCon and at Malice next year. So my book recommendation is Lavender House. I had learned about this book on First Chapter Fun with Hank and Hannah, and I was intrigued by the premise of it. So I'll just briefly describe it, no spoilers. It is about a cop who is kicked out of the police force because he's gay, and he's drowning his sorrows in a bar, and he's basically ready to commit suicide. And he's hired by a woman who wants to know whether her wife was murdered or if it was an accident. So our main character goes to the house, and the mystery ensues. He meets all the people in the house, servants, people coming in and out, and eventually solves the crime. But the reason I really liked this novel was that, first of all, the premise was completely unique. All the characters in this novel are gay. I also thought what I enjoyed most about it was that it was a combination of things. It was a locked room mystery, which I think are very, very hard to write. And I admire writers who do that. Lori Raider Day did one. Gigi Pandian does wonderful locked room mysteries. So I wouldn't say that it's a cozy mystery, however, because it does start off on a dark note. And one of the reasons that I think this book is well worth reading is it's set in 1952. So it is a historical mystery. In fact, it's a finalist for the Anthony this year in the historical category. Lev Rosen, the author, does not pull any punches about the homophobia in the 1950s. He also doesn't shy away from the fact that people had to live two lives, And what's intriguing about this setup here is that when you go to the house, everybody is themselves in that house, but when they go outside in the world, they assume an identity that basically doesn't let in on their secret. So everything's revolving around secrets. I also like the writing in the sense that he creates this inside and outside dichotomy with the world and the events. And I think, it's well worth reading. And it's a fast read. It's been blurred by quite a few people, including Walter Mosley. And I think, should read it. It's a Lavender House. Lev has also written other books. My understanding is that he has written books for children and YA. I have not read them. This is my first book by him, and I certainly look forward to, I believe there will be a sequel to this out in October, so I will be looking for that. Thank you.
Thanks so much, Gabriel. I have read Lev's children's young adult books, and they are equally as good as Lavender House is. And yes, the sequel is coming this fall. So that's very exciting news. So thank you for that choice. Again, we're seeing things from the beginning of crime fiction, or early stuff anyway, not the beginning of crime fiction, but I mean older series, and then stuff that's relatively new that people might have missed. So that's the whole point of this show, is to let people know that there are great books out there that you might have missed. And with that, I'm going to move to my co-host, Shawn Reilly Simmons, who is next up. Shawn Reilly Simmons is an Agatha and Anthony Award-winning author and editor. She's written 8 novels in her Red Carpet Catering mystery series, and over 20 of her short stories have appeared in various anthologies. Shawn hosts a podcast, 5 Compelling Questions, where she chats with authors about the writing life and creative pursuits. She is managing editor at Level Best Books and is a member of Sisters in Crime, Mystery Writers of America, the Crime Writers Association, and the International Thriller Writers. She lives in historic downtown Frederick, Maryland. Again, thank you for joining me, Shawn.
Of course, as I said, I would jump off a bridge with you if you asked me. I would totally do that. Don't tell my mom. Thank you for having me, and thank you for congratulations, as everyone has said, on your award. I'm just excited that this has come to pass for you, and I think it's so well deserved, and I'm just thrilled for you. So yay, we get to celebrate you once again next year. So that'd be great. So my book I chose is The Alienist. And since this is their first episode, I wasn't sure how, everyone would be talking about their personal experiences or just about the book or whatever. But the reason I brought it up, because it was the book that I didn't want to read, that I loved, that I couldn't stop reading. So that's why I chose it, because it was such a surprise to me that I actually liked it. It's 1994. I just graduated from college. I go to New York City. I'm going to go live there and be a writer. This is the plan. So I have no money. I'm broke. I'm taking the subway. Somebody had left this big fat paperback on the subway, and there's nobody around. It's just me. So I took it, and I said, "Oh, I don't like sci-fi. Well, I'm not going to like this. The Alienist. What is this?" I thought it was a sci-fi book. It's not a sci-fi book. So then I turned it over. I'm like, "Ooh, maybe this is something," because I've always loved murder and crime and Agatha Christie, all that kind of stuff. So I'm like, okay, maybe this is something I will like, although I don't really like historical that much. So at that point, I was like, oh, it's historical. I like current things. I'm more of a current day gal, and this isn't going to be for me. And then I read a little bit more about what it was on the back, and it's like, oh, there's going to be, children, being killed. Oh, I can't handle that either. So this is definitely not the book for me. But I had no other book, and I had a long subway ride, so I was like, all right, let's just open this up and start. I read that book. I was on the way home from work. I stayed up till 4 o'clock in the morning reading that book. And I read it the next day on the subway until I finished it. It's a very big book. And I haven't stopped thinking about it since that day. So it was the book that I was convincing myself that there's no way this is for me. And it turned out to be one of my favorite books of all time. And to me, the lesson there is to allow yourself to like things. Sometimes you just got to give things a try, even if you think it's not for you. And it could be the best experience you've ever had. I think that's the same thing with food too. I always have to work food in the conversation somehow. So the story is, it's a historical novel, obviously based in the 1800s in New York, by Caleb Carr. And there's a crazy killer out trying to, killing children. Again, that's something I usually shy away from. I think it's just brilliant. I love the writing, and one of the things that's been said about it is, I have my notes here, sorry. One of the things that's been said about it is, by the record, said the story feels like a Sherlock Holmes tale, reads like a modern thriller, and is historically accurate. And I was really impressed by the research that Caleb Carr had to put into making this book be accurate. And he has been quoted as saying, I had to read so much material of the time so I would know what my characters aren't supposed to know yet, as far as forensics, because they start diving into forensics and the beginning of all that kind of stuff, all the birth of, the CSI kind of stuff. So that is my pick. I love it. I have reread it, and I don't often reread books just because I feel like I don't have enough time to read the books going forward, but I will revisit this book often, and I love it. And I actually enjoyed the TV show, and I don't always enjoy the shows after I love a book so much, but it is my passion book, and I think everyone should read it if you haven't already. And don't be afraid. It's good. You'll like it.
Another great choice, Shawn. And the TV show was amazing. So not that we're encouraging reading here. So don't watch the show, read the book, but the show is good. All right, and I'm going to go next. You want to do my introduction for me, Shawn?
Yes, I do. I do want to do that. So Kristopher, our host, is the founder and sole reviewer at the MWA Raven Award-winning crime fiction book blog BOLO Books. Kristopher writes a column on digital crime fiction resources for every issue of Ellery Queen Mystery magazine, and he has previously served on the board of directors for Malice Domestic. Take it away, Kristopher.
Thank you so much. I have chosen The Cutting Season by Attica Locke. And I chose it after debating for a long time about what book to do, because there were so many I could choose, but there were many reasons why this book jumped to the top of the list. I have to say that it's the first book I ever wrote a review of. So for a personal reason, that's why I've chosen it. It was the book I used to launch BOLO Books when I first started that blog. So it holds a special place, and Attica holds a special place in my heart for inspiring me to begin this journey that has taken me to such crazy places. My mission has always been to prioritize diversity. So this choice made sense on that level as well. In my review, and this will tie our whole evening together nice in a bow, in my review, I said that if Toni Morrison were to write a traditional mystery, it would look very much like The Cutting Season. In this novel, Attica Locke highlights Southern plantation history with new insight, educating readers as they are also entertained. The Cutting Season is set at Valjean Plantation, located in post-Katrina, Louisiana, juxtaposing its role as a modern-day tourist attraction with its symbolic function as a blemish on our collective history. Valjean, or The Good Life, will immediately resonate as an ironic name for a setting that is so rooted in and dependent on the history of slavery. Karen Gray grew up on a plantation where her mother was the head cook, and Karen now serves as the tour and event manager for the property. Despite the plantation being the site of historic past injustices, Karen does her best to justify the rationale of using the palatial location as a tourist destination and a wedding venue. Developers have been using the surrounding lands to grow sugarcane for years, and when Karen discovers a body of a migrant worker on the edges of the plantation grounds, she begins to question her decision to raise her daughter at Valjean. The police inquiry seems destined to be unfolding under biased conditions, so Karen takes on an independent investigation, and when she uncovers proof that the present-day murder may have links to a historical case involving a runaway slave, Karen finds herself in the middle of a puzzle that weaves together property ownership, illegal workers, racial discrimination, and corporate politics. The closer she gets to the truth about this tangled web of lies and murders, the faster the danger approaches both Karen and her daughter Morgan. The theme of motherhood also resonates through the book throughout The Cutting Season, underlying the concept of generational knowledge and humanity's need to reconcile our past so that we can truly move forward. The original hardcover included a map drawn by Laura Hartman Maestro that I refer to often when I was reading and still look at occasionally. It's just a beautiful work of art. It helps orient the reader to the layout of the plantation. The Cutting Season was the first book published under Dennis Lehane's very short-lived imprint at HarperCollins. So obviously Dennis believed it was going to be a hit too. Attica had already made quite a splash with her debut novel, Blackwater Rising. This is her second novel, but she sent signals to the publishing houses that diverse voices in the genre were not going to be trifled with. And I think The Cutting Season is sometimes overlooked because it's not as, the activism in it is not quite as forefronted as it is in some of her other works, but it's no less a strong message inside the story. You just have to let it unfold, and then it resonates with you much later after you've turned the last page. The Cutting Season is first and foremost a gripping mystery dealing with two crimes separated by a century, but no reader, I promise you, no reader will turn that last page without being changed by this story. In so many ways, I feel that The Cutting Season was ahead of its time, and I happily place it on my bookshelves as an example of the best our genre has to offer. Please read The Cutting Season by Attica Locke. That wraps us up for our first episode, you all. Thanks so much for joining me. And this is so exciting. I made sure that I invited my closest friends so that we could do this under the conditions that if anything went wrong, you all would understand where we were. So I hope that you all in the audience were reminded of a book that you loved, discovered a new book that you want to rush out and read. I hope that you'll come back next month when we do another episode of We Are What We Read. And until then, read often and read widely. Thank you so much.
Thank you.